Conversations. I'm Mandy Pallock, and I'm here with my dear friend, Juli Henderson. Welcome, dear Juli. How are
Thanks
you
for
doing?
having me. I'm doing great, and I am thrilled to be with you.
Yay!
We've
Yay.
been friends for a while.
I'm so glad and grateful for your time. This is normally the part where I would share your bio and I would tell people about how you're an amazing vocalist and an amazing singer and an amazing teacher and educator, and I would tell them a bit about your advocacy work and your bio there, and it would be amazing. But instead of that, I'd love to kind of integrate it into our conversation and weave it into the conversation. So can you tell us a bit about your and Robert's story?
Yes. So first, again, thank you. I love talking about Robert's story. So sweet Robert, we call him Precious Robert, was our fifth child, is our fifth child, and he had a really rare seizure disorder, and so it's called a mitochondrial disease. He was an incredible human being that God placed in our lives as a gift to us to teach us things and for us to love on him for 18 years. So he passed away at 18. And I could not have learned the things I've learned about God, about life, about people in the community, um, how to walk with God and trust him without having my relationship with Robert. If he was not here, I would have probably been a very selfish person. I think our family probably would have been very selfish. We wouldn't have known what it meant to be a caregiver and what it really meant to live an unselfish life for someone else. And so, yeah. So I'll tell you more about it as we're talking because Robert is always on my mind.
So you just took, I don't know, 67 seconds to tell us this this amazing and amazingly hard part of your life. And that's when I actually first met you.
Yes.
Because we showed up into your church small group, into this room, and here you were welcoming people into your space, into your home, while navigating these unspeakable hard things of being a caregiver for Robert. And I love and remember Robert, Mr. Spider-Man.
Yes.
Mr. SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes, he loved you, Mandy. I loved your family.
And he would always say hello and always a part of things as you lived life with him so faithfully. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have experienced his love and to love him and see what that looked like.
Yes. Well, I love that you are here in this house with Robert because you can immediately see his face, see his laughter, see his juicy, hugs and kisses. As we were welcoming people, we needed that community too. So you guys are coming in, you're bringing food, I'm making meat, and we're getting ready to really, be together and share relationships, but also to study the word. But for me, always, as I'm welcoming you in the front door, I know Robert's in the back in his room, and he is normally with a caregiver, and he's always dying. And so I had to be very aware of how I approached people when they came into the door. Was it a good day or bad day for Robert? So that my conversation with them was about them, about you, rather than about what was happening in the back. If Robert just had a big seizure or something had happened, with one of his caregivers. So there was always that balance of, okay, Lord, I'm opening for sometimes 35 people. And yet this is happening in the back. And how do I position myself just in case someone like Mandy says, how are you doing today, Juli? Or how are you doing today, Chris? How deep can I go with that person in that moment? Or is it another conversation for another day? Sometimes I would, just love the conversation with you or someone else in the small group who actually knew it was happening and they would go there with me. Or it was, I've just put on a mask for that moment just to protect myself too. So I think those beginning relationships, I think, when they're that transparent and that honest, I think are really important. They're important to me that I make sure I'm being truthful about how I'm doing, but not give you everything at one time.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the beautiful gifts of the many that you've given me that I've learned from you is that you didn't let and have not let those really insurmountable challenges diminish your ministry
Mm.
or pause or stop your ministry.
Mm.
There are times where it's taken a different form or a different shape. But I met you when you were in the middle of life altering circumstances.
Yes.
And really, like you and your husband Chris had said, well, what does it look like to faithfully live right here, right now, in the midst of
Yes.
loving Robert well?
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that, my family was included in that and what that looked like. But really asking yourself, what does it look like? And then faithfully walking that out when you could have just completely withdrawn,
Yeah.
completely quit ministry life or church life, completely resigned from church, and said, I'm out because this is too hard.
Yeah.
What made you stick in it?
Well, thank you for saying that, first of all. But I don't know that Chris and I have ever had the luxury of saying we're going to step out.
Mm,
I don't think God has ever allowed that in our lives. It's just like, okay, just keep doing it. Um, I think it says something more about how the Lord has been so faithful, more so than about who we are, because he we knew that Robert was a part of our growth in Christ. I mean, it's just like, if you're going to get roots, you might be through a child with a disability or a terminal illness. So, or you're a caregiver suddenly for an older parent, and you're going to learn and grow. But I think I don't think we ever, I'm seriously trying to think, did we ever consider stopping
mm,
the life group
mhm,
because of Robert? And I
mhm,
don't think we could have, probably also because we needed it too, Mandy, because
mm.
we needed community. We needed to know that there was hope, outside of that back room. I always say the back room because that's his room. So we needed you
Mm,
to pour into us
mhm,
as much as maybe you needed us to open our home.
mhm,
And so I don't think God ever asked us to do it. I don't think we felt like we needed to do it. And when the time came after 5 years that it was time, it
So
was
to pass
pretty
this
clear.
baton on to
Right.
someone
And it was
else.
clear. It was, he is really dying, and we are spending Sundays for hours with people that we adore and love, but we need to be in the back room with him, or he needs to be out here. So it was clear. And I think the Lord is gracious in doing that, that it's okay when the caregiving is more than it was maybe a year
Mhm,
prior, for you to say, no, I can't. And
mhm,
so I know a lot of caregivers who do not go to church.
mhm.
The luxury of COVID, I think, was that people learned you could watch on TV. So
Yes.
that was a gift
Yeah.
to the caregivers.
Mhm.
And so I know a lot of parents who, have children with disabilities, and they can watch their church and from their living room with their child while they're, feeding them with the feeding tube, with their G tube, or,
Mhm.
changing a diaper. There are things that we've learned.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's important, that when the time is for you to step away,
Mhm.
then it's okay to step away. And
Mhm.
and then let me say also how gracious you all were as our life group to
Mhm.
come and serve at Robert's service. I
Mhm.
mean, to have the people that we'd done life with come and serve the people who came to Robert's service was an incredible gift to us. So never forget it.
Mm. I've appreciated how you have this amazing tenacity and this amazing open-handedness
Mm.
that and as a caregiver, seeing how there are things that you're holding on to no matter what.
Yeah.
And then there are times where you are letting God bring the thing. You never know what's going to happen one
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
like what that day is going to hold, which
Yeah.
is a scary place to
Yeah.
be in.
Yes.
And so this tenacity and this open-handedness and living those two side by side.
Well, I'll tell you, that doesn't come easily to me, because I would do this with both hands all the time. Like, I got this, Lord. I've got a spreadsheet. I've got a 5-year plan. Yeah, yeah, I got a plan. Um, but he didn't allow me to do that.
Mhm.
And if you want to know the honest truth, Mandy, I didn't always do it right, because I got mad at God for a long time after Robert passed. Not um Actually, I'll rephrase that. Not after he passed, as he was dying and we knew he was having a hard time. It
Mhm.
was uh I didn't know if I could trust him, even
Mhm.
though, I've been a Christian since I was 11, 12. And so that was foreign to me. Like, what is this feeling of not trusting God, So I took some time, and Chris was Chris. He allowed me to walk with the Lord in a way that I had not walked before and ask a lot of questions. And honestly, God was most of the time silent, but he wasn't, I didn't ever feel not loved. He was just silent because I needed to walk out those things and those questions and go, are you big enough? Are you faithful enough? Do you allow tragedy in people's lives? And is that something I can talk about later? Because telling people or sharing with people that it rains on the just and unjust alike, it's a hard thing when you're raising a child who has a terminal illness. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear healing and fixing and all the things that we tried to do. So I think it is, now I can agree with you that I do this, but I think maybe 15 years ago, I didn't know how. Yeah, I didn't know how to do that, but I am tenacious about the fact that Robert was a gift in our lives. And if anyone ever has the blessing, I'll say, of raising a child with a disability in any way, you're a blessed family, because this tenacity has to get you through all the stuff you have to do for that person who can't speak for themselves. But then this open-handedness is, okay, Lord, whatever you allow in this day, whoever you bring into my life today, that's of you. And so those are hard lessons sometime to learn, but I think the journey's not easy. I'll never say that it's easy, but it is worth it, because God shows up and he's faithful. So yeah, you might look at it now and say, oh, look, but you know me better. You know me better. We've had enough coffee dates to know that I struggled. And that's okay.
And that's what makes this so beautiful.
Yeah.
For sure. You were talking about the silence of God. I was thinking about the relationships that I'm most secure in. Like my relationship with my husband, we can be in the same room and we can be silent. And it's those relationships that I'm most secure in is where silence can actually happen, and how hard and growing and beautiful it is when you recognize that maybe that's reflected in the relationship that you're having with God in that moment when God is silent. And you're asking big, hard questions.
Big, hard questions. And I probably wouldn't have said that before, Robert, that was okay for me to be silent, because I was like, I'm used to conversation. I'm a talker, but I'm learning how to be a better listener. But hopefully, hopefully by the time I leave this earth, I have learned. But yeah, here's to it. But I agree with you, Chris, the same way, 44 years of marriage, we've learned, and he doesn't always need to hear what I'm thinking. But I agree. It took some time to sit and and I say breathe, just breathe with the Lord and sit and wait on him, which I'm not sure I would have learned that without Robert. I mean, truthfully, I can say that now, that sitting with the Lord about Robert, and actually sometimes not asking the questions, but just sitting and realizing, okay, he's gone, that there's a purpose, there is a legacy, there is the next family that, we can pour into and help them with what we've learned, the mistakes we've made, the things we think we did right, maybe some suggestions. But that came over time for me. With Chris, Chris is so deep, him, and that probably took him less time. Again, being a physician, trying to fix it was not something, he could do or any person could do. It was a genetic condition. But I'm learning in that. I'm growing in that.
And recognizing that people are going to navigate hard things in different ways. And what does that look like? And how do you even recognize, oh, we're going to both do this differently. And that's okay.
It's a really good point. Because everybody, we're talking about mourning, but everybody mourns differently. But you also walk differently. I mean, Chris does his thing at the hospital. I do the thing here with my students, and it's a totally different level. I don't deal with life and death every day like he does. I have the joy of music. So it's like music works. So I agree with that. We can't expect everybody to walk the same, especially in caregiving. It's just not going to happen. But we can't accept where someone is and walk with them there.
That's amazing. So you've been through unspeakable
Yeah.
pain and you are a disability advocate. Now, sometimes when someone has an experience that we don't understand, we don't know what to say, we don't know how to say it, we don't know how to bring it up.
Yep.
So here I am asking about the weather. So, what do we say and how do we say it?
Well, first of all, okay, I'll say this. That's funny because the weather always works.
So, weather always works.
Weather always
I need
works. It's
practical
great.
tips.
Yeah. Practical tips, practical and observable are things.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would always say, let the person know
Mhm.
that you're coming into a conversation with that you don't really know well. Let them know that it's a safe space. Like you're not
Yeah.
going to just go tell all their business. Like I
Yeah.
said to someone this week, hey, we're going to have this conversation over lunch. And I just want you to know that what we're talking about is not going to be like on the blog or I'm not going to go share your business. So I do that with my students and with new people.
Yes.
Um, I think that's the first thing. And then I always think it's a good thing. So people always ask me, okay, when Robert was in a wheelchair, how would I approach someone in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
And I would say, well, how would you approach someone who wasn't in a wheelchair?
Mhm.
Wouldn't you like introduce yourself and say, hi, my name is Julie. What's your son's name? What's your daughter's name? And
Right.
then maybe ask the caregiver what their name is.
Mhm.
And if you can start with a compliment, I think that's also helpful. Like you could say, "Oh, I was observing you, and not observing. That sounds like medical term. Sorry, I was watching you as you
Yes.
are caring for your child, and you're so good at it.
Mm.
You hug him, you love on him, and it looks like you're doing such a great job. May I ask you what your name is?"
Mhm.
And just ease into it, like you're doing something wonderful over here and I'm trying to acknowledge it, but I also want to know more about you.
Yes.
And so you can go there
Mhm.
easily.
Mhm.
So that would be the first thing. Put everybody at ease with it's
Yeah.
private conversation. And then who are you?
Mhm.
And then you can get into the conversation of why is your child in a wheelchair? Or
Mhm.
why do you walk like that? Or
Mhm.
why are you in a wheelchair?
Mhm.
Those are easy things, I think, once you get past that initial
Mhm.
I care about you, so I'm telling you it's private,
Yeah.
or, then I'm walking with you, and I know your name.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think those are the easy things to get in. And if they give you those two things without, turning the other direction,
Yeah.
I think you can
Yeah.
go to the next thing of, okay,
Mhm.
I'm curious. I would love to know
Mhm.
more about why your son's in a wheelchair. And
Mhm.
those are okay. I've never met a parent that said they wanted people not to ask them.
Yes.
People just don't because it's uncomfortable
Mhm.
and it's awkward.
Mhm.
They might say a disease like mitochondrial disease, and you have no idea what that is. You could
Mhm.
ask them, well, what is a mitochondrial disease? It's a
Mhm.
rare seizure disorder. I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably something we should practice
Mhm.
because in
Mhm.
the church, in our community,
Mhm.
out in our workplace,
Mhm.
there are people who maybe are caregivers who never talk about it, or maybe they themselves have a disability that no one's asked them about. I mean,
Mhm.
these are real conversations.
For sure.
So
For
I
sure.
hope that answers.
It does. Well, and it reminds me of a time I was working in the same coffee shop for a while
Yes.
doing projects, and I realized that I was seeing the same person over and
Mhm.
over again because I saw their shoes. Like, how
Wow.
crazy is that? That I'm recognizing this repetition of their shoes instead of their
Wow.
humanity,
Yes,
like looking
yes.
at them in the eye
Yeah.
and really wanting to get to know them.
Yeah.
And sometimes in like I get distracted by someone's wheelchair
Yes.
and see the wheelchair first
Hmm.
or the limitations
Yeah.
instead of recognizing this is a person made in the image of God
Yes.
and seeing their humanity and
Yes.
expressing to them
Yes.
I see your humanity by looking at them in the eye
Yes.
and
Yes.
taking the time to connect.
Yes.
And so your tips there of looking at someone in the eye
Hmm.
and saying hi
Yes.
instead of hello.
Yeah. 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 Or
Yeah,
what's wrong with you? Why
exactly. Right.
that's, yeah.
And then just by nature of asking a question,
Yes.
that's somebody can answer it or not.
Yeah. Right.
Or not be willing to answer it. And that is okay
Yes.
because you asked a question.
Yes.
And it's not, it's with the hope and the assumption that someone would choose whether to answer it or not.
Yes, and it could be that they really want to stay and talk to you, but they've got to get their child home, or
Right.
the bus is coming. You got to,
Yes.
that
Yes.
kind of thing. So it might not always be rejection of your
Yeah.
question. It's just
Right.
they might have a
Mhm.
busy schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Keep showing up. Keep
yes,
being
keep showing up, be authentic.
consistent.
Let me
Right.
say one other thing that I found to be very curious over the years in teaching, that I get the privilege of teaching a diverse group of people.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I've learned is to ask for pronouns. One person said to me, "Thank you for asking." And I thought, that's respect for that person. Not that they're not asking me to agree with their life. They're not asking me to do anything but see them and love them. And so when I do that, that's that I see you, and it might make a lot of people uncomfortable to ask that, but sometimes you need to ask that. I think we don't talk about that enough, to be really honest, because I know it's uncomfortable if you see someone that looks different than you. But it's okay to ask. And I've never found, again, someone that wasn't willing to share. There are opportunities to actually see people and respect them and let them know that they're loved. Yeah, like you said, Christ died for them just like he died for me.
What things other than words encourage and uplift someone who's going through a hard time? Let's say specifically a caregiver.
Okay. So I'll give you my examples of what helped us. So the life group always, was aware of, meals. So meals, if you're prone to cook for someone, go ahead and do that. I'm not. I'm more of a, let me have food delivered to you. And that's just as good.
Absolutely.
If you're a baker, baked goods, comfort food, it's the thing that, I found as a caregiver, and I'm a recovering caregiver. So I say that right now because I'm not, having to care for Robert or getting the privilege of caring for Robert. Gift cards left at the door. The person does not have to be home. You can just put some in a bag, brown paper it, Ziploc it, and put it on the front door and text them and say, "Hey, I left some stuff at the door." Same with flowers. I mean, to me, I love orchids, so orchids need to always be in my house. But anything, I mean, you can order orchids bouquets online, have it sent. They don't even need to know that you're doing it. Just put a little note,
I hear you saying, "Do you want dinner at 4 or 5? Not can I bring you dinner?"
Yes, that's true.
I love it.
It's I think there are so many creative ways. If we think about what would be meaningful to us, it's probably meaningful for another person. Basic things, food, rest. So how could you come in and be that, just the person next to you? Like if I come to your house and you really need a nap, but you're afraid to tell me you need a nap because that would be embarrassing. I'm in your house and then you're going to go sleep. It would be a great thing to come in and say, "Mandy, I know you've been caregiving all day and you're gonna have to do dinner tonight. Can you go lay down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes and let me just sit here with your child?" That kind of thing you can do if you know someone well.
Yes, I
Yes, again, yes, a good nap. I mean, these are basic things.
Absolutely.
Moms need to take a shower, they need to go to the bathroom. Well, how do you do that when your child might be needing your help also? Nowadays we know we can order stuff and have it delivered, so it's a little different. Back then there wasn't that. But there are ways that you could show up. I think also just picking up the phone, and most people have a phone these days. And I do something that I think is real special because it means something to me. Like when I hear a song that is meaningful, that feels like a caregiver song or is going to minister to somebody, I'll just take the phone and I'll, do the link and send it to the person and text them and said, "Thinking about you today." So it doesn't need a conversation because that person might not need to hear that from you today. But if you're thinking about them, send the song in a text and just say, "I'm thinking about you." That's really important because they might need to listen to it 2 days from now, But music, I love candles, so I'm always, got a candle I need to deliver to somebody. We have a candle on the block. And it's if you think about the things that are meaningful to you, a book, my friend loves books, and so she gives books because that's meaningful in her life. So the things that are meaningful to you, other than the basic things, I think are really important. And it just gives that person just a little bit of respite, I think, from maybe all the things that they have happening in their house if they're a caregiver. And I think that's really important. It doesn't take much for me to do that either. So
you're thinking, you're already thinking of them. Jesus is bringing them to mind for a reason. You're probably praying for them too. And then you're taking that small, easy, sometimes small, sometimes bigger, but easy, achievable step to reach out and tell that person I'm thinking of you.
Yes,
You need something.
and what I've learned also, Mandy, is to do it in the moment.
Yeah.
Because
Don't put it on
sometimes
your
the
to-do
Lord
list
prompts
and
you
wait.
because you don't know
Mhm.
what's happening in that person's life, but they really needed to hear it right then.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's
So many
amazing.
times.
Yes.
So many
So I
times.
stop and I go, okay, right now? Yeah, right now. And so I do it then.
Mhm.
And even if I don't have a song for them, it's like, I'm thinking of you, praying for you. I mean,
Mhm.
prayer is the basic. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the entrance to everything. So
And then you'll find out weeks or months later that
yeah,
that moment at that time
yes,
was
they were really
just
needing that.
what was needed.
Yeah. And it's more often than not, I think that
Mhm.
it happens that way.
Yeah.
So pay attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Be faithful with the promptings
Yes.
and
Yes.
follow through on
When the
them.
Holy Spirit prompts you, pay attention.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a growth thing too.
For
You got to
sure.
learn to do
Yeah.
it.
For sure. For sure. What questions can we ask that would help you feel seen and heard and supported? And then do questions help at all?
Yeah.
As a
Questions definitely help.
mhm,
So yes, ask the questions. Um, I like to slowly move into someone's life, with
mhm,
trust. So my first question was, how are you doing today?
yeah.
Whether it's in person or on the phone, like, what was your day like today? And
Mhm,
if they say, my day was so great, this happened, blah, 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 blah,
mhm,
then I can go, oh, great. Then how are you
mhm,
what are you going to do with that information? Did something
mhm,
happen great at work, or was it something with your family? And then
mhm.
are you something else is going to happen because of that?
Yeah,
We talk about that. If the person says, it was a horrible day, and
yeah.
they really mean it. It was
Mhm,
a horrible day. Then I get to ask the next question.
mhm,
Okay, so what, not so much what was it that happened, how did it make you feel?
mhm.
What are you going to do with that tonight? Are you able
Mhm.
to unload on someone tonight and share what happened, or can
Yeah.
you tell me what happened?
Mhm, mhm.
When someone's that vulnerable, and the first answer
Right
is,
out
it
of the
was
chute.
horrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an entrance to me that I can go, okay, how can I help?
Yeah.
So how are you today?
Mhm.
um I rarely have the opportunity to say really good. I mean, normally they don't say to me, it was a great day. It's normally like, it was a horrible day.
There's a
Especially
context to this.
if
Yeah.
it's a caregiver, because they know
Right.
I'm a recovering caregiver. So
Right.
that is easy for them to go, it was not good. And
Mhm.
so then I get to do all of that.
Yeah.
So how can I help you?
Mhm.
Who's at home with you to help? Do you have help?
Yeah.
Do you find that you need additional people to help you? Can
Mhm.
I rally some girlfriends to
Yeah.
come? So those kind of things
Yeah.
are important.
For sure. Having been on the receiving end of
Mm,
those conversations, I've observed that you ask, "How are you doing?"
mm,
And then as I answer, I know you're listening.
mm.
And then it's not just a icebreaker question, a getting to know you question. You're going to ask a follow-up question.
Yes.
And that's going to kind of determine where the conversation goes. And
Mhm.
I'm grateful for that. So what I experience is that you're asking, how are you doing? And then you're really listening for those follow-up questions.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's probably not me. That's probably a
Mhm.
learned thing from the
Yeah.
Lord. So I'll just, yeah, you see it, but I'm not sure I'm always practicing it, Mandy. But I do think, when you have someone that's really going through something very difficult,
Mhm.
they need you to listen. So if
Mhm.
you ask them a question, you
Mhm.
need to stop and pause and listen,
Yes.
because they will not give you any more
Mhm.
unless it looks like you're listening.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so if you tell me it's a horrible day, I'm going to stop and wait for a minute to
Mhm.
see if you have more to say, or I need to ask another question, because that's a pivotal moment right there, that they were that vulnerable with you,
Yeah.
and they're watching to see,
Yeah.
how much can I go, how deep can I go with you in
Yes.
this moment? If we're
Yes.
in a crowd, is this the place, or do you need to step outside,
Yes.
or is it appropriate right now to start
Mhm.
crying and telling you it was horrible?
Right.
Please take me outside, because
Mhm.
I need to talk to you.
Mhm.
I think it's, from a caregiver standpoint, I think we assess people immediately,
Mm.
because we want to share what's happening in our back room,
Mhm.
but we're not sure you are willing to listen, or you're there to really hear it.
For sure.
So if you get into a conversation, and the person allows you to ask several
Mhm.
questions,
Mhm.
then I think you have the privilege
Yeah.
of really seeing how they're doing.
So then somebody who wants to encourage
Yes.
could be aware, oh, this is an opportunity to listen.
Yes.
This is an opportunity to hear and
Yes.
then show faithful trustworthiness
Yes.
with those follow-up
Yes.
questions.
Everybody wants to be seen and loved. So if you come across anyone, I mean, you could always say the same thing. Every human being wants to be seen and loved.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like in a conversation? I'm listening. I see you, I'm looking you in the eye, and I'm listening, and I'm pausing when you pause because you're thinking about something you want to tell me probably, or else, you're worried about the food burning. It could be something totally not. Dinner's burning. Yeah. Get the dog. But most of the time it's, I'm going to pause and I'm going to wait because I want to see if there's something more you want to say. And sometimes you can know right away. I mean, this is the normal conversation that someone wants to say more. It's just not the setting. Or, you can look at someone's having a migraine. You can tell they're having a migraine right away. It's like, oh, you're having a migraine. Yeah. I mean, they cannot look you in the eye. They can't concentrate. And so, maybe that's not the time to go deep dive with them in questions. But most of the time, people are willing to share their heart because they want to be seen and loved. And that goes for everybody.
Juli, I'm so grateful that we can have any hard conversations.
Yes.
And you can always say, yep, nope, that's not going there. And then sometimes we'll go really deep. And I
Yes.
love that. And I'm so grateful.
Yes.
So I've noticed that after a really hard thing, some relationships just fizzle. And then some stand the test of time.
Yes.
And I can think back to when Robert died, not knowing how to be there, how to be present without being invasive. What does that look like? And I think sometimes we'll just withdraw. But what have you learned about the relationships that last?
Okay. Very good question. I think because I've had great loss, I want really deep relationships. And I think that's true of most people, but I think it's especially true of caregivers. I don't know what the medical, psychological reason is for that, but I've noticed it in many families that we don't have time anymore for casual relationships, even though we have a lot of acquaintances. There's this desire to always be deep because we've experienced this great loss. I'll tell you, I have a group of girlfriends, extensive. You're in that group that I can just say, you want to go to coffee? Yeah. So coffee is always appropriate. We've done it a lot. I do several people, not always just to, I'm not trying to find out anything about them. I just like, could I go to coffee with you? Want to go to coffee? For sure. Go to breakfast. You want to go to lunch? Yeah. Those relationships have been born, I think, out of the people who knew Robert. It's hard for me to go deep with a lot of people that didn't know Robert. I have students that didn't know Robert, but the minute I tell them about Robert, there's already then that bond that, oh, he's not here, but you're in his home. And so when they realize that,
in his spot.
His wheelchair would be right here with his SpongeBob and his and his Spider-Man. I would like to say that I have really, really long relationships with people who didn't know Robert. Of course, it's 18 years, so we had some time to make some relationships.
For sure.
The new relationships I have, I try to tell new friends about Robert. It has a different feel, but it's still important. I think the new relationships can grow too. When a relationship fizzles out, to answer your question, it is very difficult for me. I love deeply. And so, that's a hard question for me. I've only been a couple times in my life where relationships have fizzled. And it's difficult. And I still feel it. Look at me crying now. Stupid. I mean, I shouldn't say stupid. I just love people deeply. And I don't do it always perfectly. I hold on to people too tightly sometimes. And so I'm trying to grow in that. I don't know that I know how to do it differently. My poor students, I tell them when they join the studio, I said, I'm sorry, you're part of my family now. And I want to know, like, when you graduate, I want a graduation announcement. I want to know when you get married. I want a wedding invitation. I want to buy you a gift. I want to know when you have a baby. I want you to come back and share your family with me. These things are really important to me. So I'm about long relationships because I feel like when God brings someone in my life, they're for life.
Hmm.
And so my position with them is we're going to walk life together, and that's joyful.
So what I hear you say, I'm just gonna say it back to you. You can tell me if I got it right.
Okay,
But is like a caregiver doesn't want relationships to fizzle.
that's right.
Like move into that, despite
Yes,
the awkward, despite
yes,
the hard, do all those same things you were talking about, which
yes.
is recognize the humanity and
Mhm.
look someone in the eye and
Yeah.
say, "Hi,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
here for you, no
yes,
matter what." And even if someone doesn't have the emotional capacity at that moment
yeah,
to return, which is fine,
yes,
you know, keep doing
yes,
that.
yes. And I think, again, I think the
Uh-huh.
question you can ask honestly is, do you want to talk about
Mhm.
your child that
There you
passed? Do
go.
you want to talk about your parent that passed? Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about your sister who
Yeah.
passed?
Mhm. Yeah.
I think you just ask. I
Just
mean,
ask.
people will tell you
Mhm.
when you ask them
Yeah.
in love.
Yes. Yes.
But I think we hesitate because it feels awkward. It's
Mhm.
like I haven't experienced what you've experienced, so I'm not sure if
Mhm.
it'll be offensive to you.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I just did this recently where I didn't know how to ask a question.
Mhm.
So I said, "Do you mind if I ask you like personal questions and you
Yeah.
can just tell me none of your business,
Mhm.
if I get too deep?" It
Yeah.
was fine. So we went
Mhm.
deep because there was
Yes.
that entrance of I really want to know, but I
Mhm.
don't know how to say it. I'm going to
Yes.
flub it up and I'm going to
Yes.
not be politically correct, but can I
Right.
just ask you what's on my heart? I think
Mhm.
that's important. I think we always have the opportunity to walk with people and have deep relationships,
Mhm. Mhm.
whether we take advantage of that or not, or
Yes.
some fizzle out, or some are lasting. I think that's part of the journey
Mhm.
too, learning um, to let some people stay and some people will not walk with you for a long time.
Mhm. And it's freeing when you recognize that
Yeah.
that these relationships are ones that Jesus is bringing along,
Yes.
and that there are times where paths will diverge,
Yes.
and just recognizing and trusting that
Yeah.
that there's a story and a plan there.
Yeah. And that's
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
if you tear up about it or not, it's still okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Julie, have you ever felt attacked or unsupported by questions or statements, even if they were allegedly well-meaning?
Hmm.
I know you have so graciously managed so many questions
Mhm.
that people will bring. What questions should not be asked? We're talking a lot about questions. What
Yes.
statements should not be said when the intention is to show love and care?
Well, there are some terms, we don't use anymore.
Mhm.
So I would say if you're going to talk to someone in the disability community, you're never going to use the word retarded,
Mhm.
never going to use the word crippled.
Mhm.
I think that if your heart towards the person is a loving position,
Mhm.
most people get that.
Mhm.
So it's okay to flub up. I mean,
Yes.
I
Yes.
know I've said some things, that weren't right. Sometimes I just go, I didn't know,
Mhm.
and you apologize.
Mhm.
Um, I had someone on the blog, which an adult female who wrote to me because I use the word special needs
Mhm.
because I'm taking care of a child. And
Right.
so a child has special needs that I need to take care of. And she was an adult with a disability, is an adult with disability. And she said, please don't use that term when
Mm.
you refer to me because I am not advocating for special needs. I'm advocating for rights for myself. And as an
Mhm.
adult, if you say special needs, people think that I am trying to be special. And she
Sure.
said, I'm not.
That
I'm
makes sense.
trying to be an adult who's
Yeah.
fighting for, my equality.
Mhm.
And I thought, thank you. And I wrote
Mhm.
it back and I said, you are so right.
Mhm.
I'm wrong. Thank you for
Mhm.
saying that because I use a different terminology than you do. So sometimes the
Mhm.
words aren't going to be
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
Um, but I think those will be the ones that have stood out to me that I know I've had to learn how to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
There are some other terms, that they sometimes it's every 5 years the terminology changes
Sure.
and across the spectrum of
Yes.
everything, and so you
Yes.
have to learn new things.
Mhm.
I have never felt that someone said anything to me wrong.
Mm.
I've felt things like you're
Mhm.
not welcome in this store or you're not
Mhm.
welcome in this restaurant because your child is seizing and we
Mhm.
don't know what that is, but the look was like, why can't your child be quiet?
Mhm.
And when Robert seized, sometimes it was very animated and it could
Yeah.
be loud and it would rock a wheelchair
Yeah.
or his little stroller before he had the wheelchair.
Mhm.
And so that's very uncomfortable
Mhm.
because when people don't understand what's happening, the looks of disapproval can be very hurtful.
Mhm.
So I don't, to answer your question, I don't think I've ever been One time someone said something to me, one time.
Yeah.
But most of the time it was looks of
Mm.
disapproval, like, get your child together. And I want to say, and I did say one time, Mandy, I said to a lady, he's having a seizure. And she didn't think it was appropriate for me to be in that store.
Mm.
And why did you bring him? And so my response, I'll say, maybe it wasn't as godly as it should have been, but in the
I'm thinking of
moment,
a few over here.
I know, in the moment, Mandy, I said to her, I hope you never have a terminal illness that causes you not to be able to go in somewhere.
Yeah.
I hope no one ever says to you, you don't belong here.
Mm.
Went right over her head.
Mm.
Didn't know the lady, never saw her again. But that to me in that moment needed to be spoken. That
She will never know how much
yes,
effort and work it took
Mhm.
you
And I was saying,
Robert just to get there.
yes, and I was saying to her, he has a terminal illness, and at that point he was seizing, and it was loud, it was animated in the store, but that made her very uncomfortable. And so her not being comfortable then meant that I shouldn't be there. And that's when your little mom horns come out. And it's like, yeah, no. Yeah, no. Yeah, I will protect him and allow him to go in public whenever he can. And if something happens, it happens. So you don't want to ever say to somebody, you don't belong here. He shouldn't be in here. She shouldn't be in here. You know, don't bring that person in here in a wheelchair because it's going to disturb our lunch. It's going to, you know, these kind of things. I think most people know not to say, but sometimes the other part I'll tell you, I love when a child would come up to Robert and just say, what's wrong with you? I mean, a child saying that is different than an adult saying it, but a child saying it is so innocent. And it's like, they're just like, what's that chair for?
Yes.
Why is he in a wheelchair? And it's so fun to then get on the child's level and say, well, he's not like you. He can't do these things, so he needs a chair. He can't walk. And that is fabulous to me, because that's the innocence of a child. Doesn't come across so well when an adult.
Yeah. So recognize what role you're in.
Read the room. Yeah.
And be aware of facial expressions.
Yes.
Yeah. Be aware of facial expressions, because those communicate a whole bunch.
Yes. So I think I was protected from a lot of the people saying things to me.
3 cheers.
So I know people have had some things said to them, but not really me.
I think this is probably an accurate statement, Julie, that we're all kind of just like, it's just a matter of time before each of us are in a hard situation. And navigating an unforeseen circumstance, or where you're all of a sudden in a caregiving experience that you didn't expect. So how do you use your love and care for a person to bridge the gap between you and someone else's different experiences? I'll back up and ask the question another way.
Okay. Yes, you saw my eyes. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's what I'm thinking. Like, that's initially how you and I connected. I chose you as my mentor because,
and I felt privileged.
Exactly. Yes. Because as I saw you navigating your hard things, and then I was bumping into my own unexpected hard things with a chronic illness and with special needs. What does that look like? I saw, like, you're someone I can talk to because you have it harder. I don't know better words for that.
That's okay.
But
it works.
You know, and so I felt like I could express that to you. And so what helps you so naturally bridge the gap between, like, you're a caregiver with someone, we're a caregiver to someone with extreme, like, seizures, right? And yet you could minister to me as someone who is supporting a husband with chronic health challenges. And those are so different, right?
Yes, they are.
But what does that bridging gap look like? If that question makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. So twofold. Hard things are just hard things. So whether mine is with Robert or you and your family, the conversations still are, how do I navigate this? So for me, it was, how do I trust God in this? How do I show up for whoever is that I'm taking care of or I'm there for? Those two things are the same. And so if you and I were going to talk about it, I would have said, I have to do this, this, and this today, but the second thing is really hard for me. I can't do that well. And so would you pray with me? And just this week, pray with me about this thing. I'm having to go to this new doctor. I don't want to hear this new diagnosis. Would you just pray that I'll be willing to accept what the diagnosis is,
Yeah.
because that's who Robert is.
Mhm.
Yours might be, okay, I got to take the kids here, I got to do this and then this. And your third thing is the hardest thing. So then we
Mhm.
can relate on the hardest thing that's
Makes
going to
sense.
be for us that week.
Mhm.
You tell me whatever that thing is, and you say, then could you pray with me about this? Because this is my hardest thing.
Mhm.
The two hards might be like this or could be like this,
Yeah.
but the hard things still need to be brought up so
Mhm.
that we can walk together.
Yeah.
So they don't need to be equal,
Mhm. Yeah.
but hard things are just hard things.
Mhm.
And so I think that's, if we could go there and just relate to people, and then also realizing that none of us are going to get it perfectly right all the time. I had to learn that because I want to be perfect. I'm thinking I should grow in Christ and have it all together, and I just don't.
Yes.
Yeah, miss the
Let's do
mark.
that.
Yeah, but I think that, does that answer your
It
question?
does,
Is that
yeah.
okay?
Yeah, it's recognizing that we have like the nouns are going to be different.
Yes.
The persons, places, and things are going to
Yeah.
be different. But
Yes.
someone who's coming in with a loving, Jesus focused,
Yes.
mentoring heart
Yeah.
is going to focus on, hey, I see you, I love you.
Yes.
and
Yes.
what does it look like to
Yeah.
express that?
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
I think for the receiving, the caregiver or whoever is the receiving, being willing to accept that,
Mhm.
because caregivers are very, most of the time, strong people. I mean, I'm not just saying I'm
Yeah.
so strong, but in
It's
order
a
to,
necessity.
yes, it's a necessity, whether it's a child, a young adult, or an elderly parent.
Yeah.
There's something that comes in there. You said tenacity. There's this tenacity that I will do it. And I say with cape on, you know, I got a cape and yeah, it's on. And so then it's hard to break that down and then go like this and go, yeah, I really need help. I'll accept your help. That's hard for caregivers most of the time to do, because it takes so much energy to take care of this person. And then
Yes.
I'm going to allow you in my life. And
Which takes energy.
it does.
Yeah.
And so on the caregivers side, I think being willing to ask and then accept help.
What thoughts might you share with us on wise boundaries? And like, are there ways to find out where someone is on their journey so that we can support them in that?
Yes.
And then, so yeah, what thoughts do you have on that?
I'm not good at boundaries. I'll tell you that. I'm not really good with them, because again, everybody that comes into my life, I feel like they're a gift from the Lord,
Here
and
we
I'm
are.
to embrace, and I'm going to learn something. Whether I pour into their life or not, I feel like I'm to receive something from them. If you're in my life, then I'm going to be transparent with you. The only time I think that it's appropriate, like if we're in a big setting, we're at a, party or something, a church event, a women's group, and there's a moment to go deep in a conversation, but it might not be private. My own boundary for myself and that person is not to do that in that moment,
For sure.
to protect the person. So then I always say, usher them outside, usher them into another room to protect that conversation.
Well, what I hear you saying with that is like you're very open-handed, open-armed, and then those boundaries would be set in reaction to isn't the right word at all. In response to in response to that relationship.
Yes.
And so when there's a moment, so you're prayerfully saying, okay, in this moment, what does God want me to do? How does he want me to respond? And that might be not interacting.
Yes. And I think,
but it's responsive, not pre-planned.
Right.
That makes sense.
And I would love to say I'm better at that. I'm just not. I am an open book.
Yeah.
It can get me in trouble sometimes. But I generally, I love people, and I love,
amazing.
No, I mean, because I didn't always, I'm saying, don't think I'm anything more than you see, but I do think that I have the gift, because Robert passed, of valuing life in a different way. That if you're in my life, Mandy, you're in my life for a long time.
Yeah.
And I value that I've been given the privilege of having a Mandy in my life, that God has allowed me to walk with a Mandy. And I just don't take that lightly anymore. I think life is too short, and I've seen life be short. And so I'm for the long haul.
I'm so glad and grateful, because I am the blessed and happy recipient of that, for sure. Let's talk mentoring for a minute. Because you are my mentor in so many ways, from small group, and then being in your vocal studio, and then being a text away and having coffee. You bring this openness to every conversation. And I know that I can ask you any question, and you can ask me any question, which is a really risky relationship to be in. And I'm so grateful for it. And I was thinking, Juli, 4 years ago.
I might need some water for this. It sounds like you're about to go deep.
So 4 years ago, we're in the middle of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
And this showed up on my front porch.
Mm.
and
Mm.
and it's still wrapped,
Mm.
you know? And I'm so grateful because I know what's in it.
Mm.
I know it's one of your amazing candles.
Mm.
And I know it smells great because you can smell it through the wrapper. But like it means so much. So for 4 years, this guy has been on my desk
Wow.
as I'm writing and thinking
Mm.
and working on different projects because and I might open it someday.
I hope you do. It's a really good candle.
I know, but like it means so much
Mm.
wrapped up.
Mm.
And I was thinking about how it's kind of a picture of mentoring
Mm.
because I'm positive you gave it to me, envisioning here she is, she's gonna light it, she's gonna open it, she's gonna light it. There it is, right?
Yes.
And mentoring is like that sometimes.
Mm.
Like here Jesus brings these relationships along, and like our responsibility before God is to love and to mentor and
Yes.
invest, and then it's up to them.
Yes.
Like, what are they going to do with that
Yes.
gift?
Yes. It's true.
Are they going to open it? Are they not going to open it? Is it going to sit on a desk? Is it going to be like, what's that reminder going to look like? But all that to say that that's what mentoring looks like and discipleship looks like. And so, like, here you are giving a gift, and then what that person does with it is in God's hands
Yes.
and in their hands. So, yeah, as the happy beneficiary of that investment in my life,
Wow.
I'm grateful.
I'm
And
shocked.
someday I'll open it.
I'm shocked that you have not opened that. All that time wrapping I did.
I know, it's beautiful.
Oh, well, that is a real surprise, man. You had no idea. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
But isn't that what we get to do too? We
Yes.
get to just do something for somebody
Yes.
that you think might be special. Again,
Mhm.
candles mean something to me, so I need to give you that. Unless you don't like smells, then I won't give you a candle. But there needs to be that, for me anyway,
Mhm.
that point of contact that I thought about you.
Absolutely.
And so everybody knows me, knows I love candles. So
Love it.
why wouldn't I give a candle? Because that's important to me. So
And it makes so much sense because now when I light candles,
oh my
God bless
gosh,
Juli.
yes, I love it.
Yes.
It's a problem.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
But it's a beautiful problem, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this really blessed me. And wow, Mandy, I had no idea.
Well, and it's such a beautiful picture to me of mentoring because I burn other candles and they're smelling amazing and I love that. But I think it communicates love and thought, and like every conversation does. So, yeah,
Wow, thank you
I
for
think
that.
I'm happily declaring that mentorship works.
It does. It works.
And so
Even if we don't call it that.
exactly, I use them interchangeably. Mentorship,
Yes.
discipleship, investing, love.
Yes.
It works and it
Yes.
makes a difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
I rarely use those words. I don't use mentoring. And we talked about that. Like, I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
qualified to be your mentor, but I walk with you. I
Yeah.
think of it more as
Mhm.
you're walking with someone and
Yeah.
you're being vulnerable enough with them
Mhm.
to have the conversations that need to happen. And yeah, so if you call that or someone else calls it mentoring, I'm all in, but I'd
Right.
rather say,
Yeah, it's like
I'm just going to walk with
loving
you.
you and living life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Mhm.
see you and I'm going to love you.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Juli, I'm thinking about how there might be someone who's watching or listening that's in the middle of a really hard thing.
Yes.
They're caring for, they're supporting someone that they love, and they're craving relationships, but physically or emotionally or mentally, they're just too exhausted to reach out. What thoughts might you have for that person?
Well, I'll say something that a lot of people say, and it has meaning for me.
Mhm.
I hope it'll have meaning for anyone who's listening, that they are not alone.
Mhm.
And they might feel like they're alone, but they're
Mhm.
not. There are
Mhm.
people around you. I'll speak directly to the person. There are people around you
Yeah.
that see you and want to love you. And hopefully you'll be receptive to that and be willing to ask for help and then receive it.
Mhm.
I think also there are online communities that you could be a part of. We have In Our Arms Facebook
Right.
community that you
Mhm.
can join. There are people
Mhm.
there to ask questions and get information, or just have a group that maybe is walking through hard things too. And you
Mhm.
realize, okay, I'm not the only one. You're not alone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's appropriate. I I think sometimes we're afraid to ask for help because we're afraid it might be rejected. Because if I take the risk and say, Mandy, I need you to come over and I could really use some help with the laundry today. I didn't sleep last night because Robert seized all night. Could you come do laundry? Could you help me? Just be here with me.
Yeah.
If you say no, that's very scary.
Yeah.
I know you wouldn't, but
Right.
and
Right.
most people wouldn't say
Right.
no. They might not be able to do it right
Yeah.
then, but they could maybe come the next day and do it with you. But the fact that you asked and said, "Hey, I need help," is
Take
really
that risk. Yeah.
important, right? It's really important. So to know that you're not alone, not only do people see you, but God sees you, and He's not left you alone. And my favorite scripture, James 1:2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kind, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must have its way so that you will be perfect, not lacking anything. So my desire for everyone, especially caregivers, is they're not lacking anything. Well, what does that mean then? Consider it pure joy. Doesn't always feel joyful. A lot of times it doesn't feel joyful, but consider it that you've been given something to do that's hard, but consider it pure joy. Because I want to be perfect. I want that perfection and the walking out with Christ in my life for a lifetime.
Yeah, that's something that God has for you.
Yes.
Lacking nothing.
Yes, lacking nothing. So I wish I could hug the person who's hurting, because that to me is a way to express love. And some people don't like hugs. I give them anyway. Just go all in.
Yes.
But I do think there's that need to hear someone say, "You're not alone. I care about you." And there are ways. Reach out to a girlfriend, just one. I'd like to challenge people, like, just this month, decide that one person you know, normally a girlfriend, you're going to reach out to her and say, "Hey, could you meet me for coffee?" Or you're going to reach out to someone at your church and just say, "Hey, when I come into church today, I'm going to be by myself this week," or whenever the day is. "Would you mind meeting me at the door, because I'm fragile and I don't want to go into the church service by myself." That is such a cool way to minister to someone. "Mandy, could you meet me at Life Group, and I'll wait and I'll park and we'll walk in together." There are ways that you could ask for help that don't seem so fragile.
For sure.
It's just walking in with somebody. It's just meeting them at the door. It's meeting them for coffee. So I think that is something I would want to encourage caregivers in, that there are ways you can reach out that aren't fragile.
Yeah, think through that one thing.
Yes,
Like, maybe
one
I'm not
thing.
emotionally able to engage over coffee.
Yes.
But I can look at a group online.
Yes, that's
and,
right.
And connect with
Yes.
the group online. So what's that one thing I can
Yes.
do? What's that one text I can send?
Yes.
What's that one choice I can make?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to take the baby steps,
Yeah.
but like we were talking about, if we can just say, "This month I'm going to try this thing," I think that's really important, because next month you might be able to do another thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you just break it up into little increments, because we don't know what next month necessarily is going to look like. Maybe the person you reached out to and met at the door at church that day is actually going to be the person that helps you next month with something harder. But you've made a connection that's...
Do the next right thing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's more than anything, it's that you're not alone.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm thinking how there's maybe another person who has a friend or a relationship where that person is going through a really hard thing, and they don't know what to say or what to do. And we've covered so much of that.
Yes.
But do you have any like closing thoughts for that person?
I have one saying that a friend helped me. We wrote a saying together: "Friends don't need a grand entrance or a grand production from you. They just need you to be there." So we're always thinking we have to do something huge. I need to throw a party for that person because they're really, no, the person just needs you to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Or send a text that says, "I love you today. I know it's a hard day. You're going to get through it." I mean, there are things like that. We don't need grand gestures all the time. We just need to be there. It's simple as saying, "Mandy, I'm here for you today if you need me." You might not need me, but at least I'm here if you need me. That kind of thing is important.
Absolutely.
So you can always say that to a friend. If it's someone you don't really know well, I like the phone call better, because texting can sometimes not feel as personable, but I can call you and say, "Hey, you know, what does your week look like this week? Is there
Yes.
anything I can help you do?
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Absolutely.
Can I go to the grocery store for you? You know, do you need a couple things delivered?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I've discovered the beauty of voice memos. If you
Yes.
can send someone a voice memo,
Yeah.
so then you don't even have to let the thing
That
ring.
is true. Yes. There's so many things
And
that
your
I've
voice is
learned.
there.
Yes. Most of the time it's my kids
I know.
or my
Yes.
students who are teaching me new things.
Yes.
I just give them the phone and show me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
personal touch that shows
Yes.
personal
Yes.
thought.
Yes. And then you can always not say anything and drop something off.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the conversations are just not fluid.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody loves something on their front door.
Yeah.
Little thing of
True
flowers,
story.
candle,
True story.
could be anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, whatever is meaningful to you, think about it. Could
Mhm.
it be something that's tangible for the person
Yeah.
that needs that
Mhm.
extra care?
For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about In Our Arms right now? What does
Yes.
that look like?
So you said to me earlier that I took Robert's whole life and our whole journey and put it in, what was it, 60 seconds?
Yes.
So if you want more than 60 seconds, it's the blog. So
Mhm.
In Our Arms blog
Mhm.
on social media. And the blog, we are in almost our third year. Robert's 10th anniversary of him passing comes in February. So we're here right now
Yeah.
in that time frame where
Yeah.
we were losing him and then lost him. And so that was the impetus for the blog. I felt like after Robert passed that I could share more with people about our journeys to help the next family. It's always been about how can I help the next family, because we were getting questions about how did you do this? How do you plan a funeral if you have to? How do you navigate, the art and the IEP at school? All the things that we were having to deal with, we were now able to put in writing in the blog. So the blog really is for caregivers, for medical community, teachers, therapists. We get to share our story and hopefully some helpful things throughout the weekly newsletters. And so then the blog is also supported by the sales of the candles. But really it's how do we get into the community and support people who have disabilities and then the people that care for them, the caregivers. And that's our whole reason for doing it. It doesn't make sense with me, with 80 some odd students, to have a blog and a newsletter and a candle and be out in the community advocating. But it's the only thing besides my family and my relationship with God that brings me joy like that I get to help the next person, because people helped us. We didn't do that all by ourselves. So if I can help the next person through the blog, then that's my heart.
I think that's what redemption looks like.
Yes.
So you're living it out.
I get the privilege because of Robert to walk that out.
Perfect. Yeah, I know people are going to want to connect with you, to be encouraged by what you have to say, and then also support the work that God is doing in and through you. So inourarms.blog.
Yes, that's it.
Fantastic. Juli, thank you for your time. Thank you for you. Thank you for your life.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for walking with me.
I'm glad. Here's to another couple decades.
That's right. I've got some stuff to do.
True story.
Love you. Okay.